Alright, so up to this point in our site building series, we've learned lots of things, from installing Drupal to adding site content, content types, fields, taxonomy, installing and enabling modules, themes, and all of this is great. But so far we've been doing this all as what I like to call the master user, or user 1. Now, we probably don't want everybody to use our website as the same user. The beauty of Drupal is we're allowed to have pretty much as many users as we want, and we can certainly tailor what those users can and cannot do and can and cannot see on our website. Now, in order to manage these users, the first thing we do is go to our people place. Inside of people, you will see that we already have our user that we created during installation. That user has a role of administrator. Notice in the upper right corner we have two tabs, List and Permissions. Let's take a look at Permissions. This page is a pretty daunting page. There's lots going on here and lots of things that can be done, turned on and turned off. And this list will continue to grow as you add contributed modules. So always make sure that you come back to this page as you continue to build your site out, as things may need to be modified when it comes to permissions. Now with permissions, we have something called roles. Underneath our permissions tabs, we now have two other sub-tabs. We've got the permissions, which we are on, and roles. Basically, roles are collections of permissions that you can assign to users. Currently, Drupal comes after installation with three primary roles: an anonymous user, an authenticated user, and an administrator. Currently, the master user has the role of administrator, but please do understand that this role is not the exact same thing as a master user. For example, if we look at edit permissions, everything is currently turned on, but no, not everything, because as we continue to grow this site, remember, as I said, as your site grows, permissions continue to come and grow. So although administrator does seem like it would be the master user, it is not. It is a role that you may assign to someone that has a lot of privileges, just not all of them. An anonymous user is basically the user that is viewing your site and is not logged in and has a very minimal set of of permissions. The authenticated user is basically just like the anonymous user, but is not logged in and may have even more permissions. These both are locked roles and cannot be edited because they are very tightly integrated into Drupal's core. You can definitely edit their permissions, but you just cannot remove these users or rename them. Now you're thinking, well, this seems pretty stock and pretty easy to use. I'm just going to let it be. Why would I want to create roles? Well, a perfect example is right now on our site we have a content type of press release. Well, in your company you may want a lot of people to be able to publish press releases, but what you might not want to be able to do is give them permissions that are advanced. The last thing you may want to have done is someone in your company accidentally putting your site in maintenance mode. So let's create a role called press releases. Now that we have a role press releases, we can edit that role's permissions. So now that this press release role has all these different permissions we can set, you can kind of see how we can limit their access. We might not want them to administer blocks, we might not want them to administer comments, or any of these other things that is possible for all the roles. So what we really probably just want them to be able to do is create some content. In order to create some content, as you can see, I mean, this list just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, administer content. All right, well, we definitely want them to at least be able to administer content. So we at least have to turn that on. And then besides administering content, what else do we want them to be able to do? Well, we want them to probably be able to view published content. We want them to view unpublished content because they may not necessarily publish their press release. We want them to definitely look at revisions and revert revisions because we gave that option inside our content type of press release. We may not want to be able to give them the right to delete revisions because, you know, they may have made a mistake and we may be able to hold them responsible for that. Now you can also start to see that content types have different permissions of their own. Because we are basically limiting these people to press releases, let's not give them any type of privileges to other content types. Here we go. Press release, create new content type. Well, we definitely want this role to create a content type. We want them to be able to edit their own content type. Here's a perfect example of being able to definitely get down to permissions. We might not want them to edit any content type, just their own. We definitely may be able to let them delete their own content, and we definitely don't want them to be able to delete any content. So you can kind of see the power of permissions. We're not going to definitely go into all of these permissions because, as I said, as your site grows, these grow. But at least you can start seeing the power, user, master user, and administrators or other roles may be able to put upon other users. Let's go ahead and save what we've done here and see what we do next. Okay, let's go back to the list of our roles. There we go. All right, roles. Now we have a press releases role. That's all fine and dandy, but how does that go about being used? Well, let's go ahead and create a user just so you can see. If we go to our list page, this is our list of users, we can now add a new user. Let's just say this is Joe Smith. joe@email.com. All right, there we go. Now we're able to automatically assign him a role. Notice because we are at least creating this user, that means they have the ability to log in. They're in the user, so they will automatically already inherit all of the permissions on an authenticated user, but we also want them to have the permissions of press releases. So we'd create that account, and now when Joe Smith logs in, he will have all the permissions we gave him, but will not have the permissions of doing other things. So you can kind of start to understand and learn the power behind the Drupal system when it comes to really managing what people can and cannot do. So again, most of this is all under people, permissions, and roles. As some modules get more and more advanced, and some other series will learn that there are other ways of configuring some of these things, but pretty much everything is handled under permissions.